My name is Marlena Whitmore, I'm 68 years old, and I used to run a small bakery in Fresno before I retired. Right now, I'm standing on the sidewalk outside what used to be my home, my hands shaking as I grip the handle of my old suitcase. The rain is soaking through my coat, but I can barely feel it. All I can hear is my son Garrett's voice echoing in my head. "Get out or I'll call the cops." His wife Sienna stood behind him, that satisfied smirk on her face that I'd seen too many times before. The neighbors are watching from their windows, whispering about the old woman being thrown out by her own son. 20 minutes ago, I was making dinner in the kitchen I'd cooked in for 40 years. Now I'm homeless, betrayed by the boy I raised, fed, and loved more than life itself. My phone is dead, my arthritis is screaming in this cold rain, and I have nowhere to go. But what hurts more than the cold or the shame is knowing that Sienna finally won. She finally turned my baby boy against me. I should have seen this coming when Garrett married her 5 years ago. Sienna Blackwood was beautiful, I'll give her that. With her perfect blonde hair and designer clothes that cost more than I made in a month at the bakery. But there was something cold in her green eyes, something calculating that made my skin crawl. At their wedding, she whispered to me during the mother-son dance. "He's mine now, Marlena. Better get used to being second place." I laughed it off then, thinking she was just marking her territory like young brides do. But she meant every word. She started small, forgotten birthday calls, missed Sunday dinners, sudden work emergencies, whenever I needed help. Garrett always had an excuse, always defended her. "Mom, you're being paranoid," he'd say. "Sienna loves you." But love doesn't look like slowly erasing someone from their child's life. Love doesn't look like standing silent while your husband screams at his elderly mother to get out or face the police. The rain is getting heavier now and I need to move, but my legs feel like concrete. Where does a 68-year-old woman go when her only child throws her out? My sister Ramona lives in Oregon, but we haven't spoken in 3 years after she borrowed money and never paid it back. My pension barely covers groceries, let alone a hotel. I worked my whole life, raised Garrett alone after his father died, sacrificed everything so he could go to college and become the successful architect he is today. This house. I bought it with my husband's life insurance money, kept it through the recession, through my cancer treatments, through everything. I put it in Garrett's name last year because Sienna convinced him it would protect the asset. Protect it from what? From me. The woman who paid for it with blood, sweat, and tears. I can see Mrs. Chan across the street pulling her curtains closed, probably calling her daughter to gossip about poor Marlena Whitmore finally getting what she deserved. They all think I'm difficult, that I'm the stereotypical mother-in-law who can't let go. They don't know the truth about Sienna, about what she's been doing. I finally force myself to start walking, my suitcase wheels catching on every crack in the sidewalk. The bus stop is 3 blocks away, and I'll figure out where to go once I'm out of this rain. My coat pockets have $43 and change. I counted while Garrett was yelling. $43 to start a new life at 68. But as I walk, something strange happens. The shock starts to fade, and underneath it I feel something else. Anger. Not the helpless kind that makes you cry, but the kind that burns clean and bright. Sienna thinks she's won. She thinks she's gotten rid of the annoying old woman who saw through her perfect act. But she doesn't know that I've been keeping records. Every cruel word, every manipulative move, every time she's hurt my son. I've written it all down. She doesn't know about the safety deposit box at the bank, or what's inside it. She doesn't know that throwing me out might be the biggest mistake she's ever made. Because now I have nothing left to lose, and a woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous kind. The bus stop bench is soaked, but I sit anyway. My phone might be dead, but my mind is racing. Garrett screamed at me to get out, said I was toxic, that I was ruining his marriage. But I know my son. I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes when Sienna squeezed his shoulder, the way he flinched when she whispered something in his ear. He's not my enemy. He's her prisoner. And now that I'm out of the house, now that she thinks she's safe, maybe I can finally prove it. The bus arrives, its headlights cutting through the rain like hope. I climb on, my suitcase bumping against the steps, and the driver, a kind-looking man about my age, helps me with it. "Rough night?" he asks gently. I almost laugh. Rough night. If only he knew. "You could say that," I reply, finding a seat in the back. As the bus pulls away from my neighborhood, from my old life, I make myself a promise. Sienna Blackwood destroyed my family, but she's about to learn what happens when you underestimate a woman who survived everything life could throw at her. This isn't the end of my story. It's just the beginning. 5 years ago I was actually happy. Garrett had just gotten promoted to senior architect at his firm, and he was finally ready to settle down. We used to have lunch every Thursday at this little cafe near his office, where he'd show me his building designs and I'd bring him leftover pastries from the bakery. "Mom, I want you to be the first to know," he said that Thursday in March, his brown eyes sparkling with excitement. "I met someone. I was thrilled. My boy deserved love after focusing on his career for so long." He showed me her picture on his phone. Sienna Blackwood, marketing executive, Stanford graduate, came from money in San Francisco. "She's perfect, Mom," he gushed. "Smart, beautiful, ambitious." What he didn't say, what I noticed immediately, was how she looked at the camera like she was calculating its worth. A week later, he brought her to Sunday dinner. She walked into my home like she was doing me a favor, her designer heels clicking on my hardwood floors, her nose wrinkling slightly at the smell of pot roast. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, her handshake limp and cold. "Garrett's told me so much about you." The way she said it made it sound like a threat. That first dinner should have been my warning. Sienna spent the entire meal talking about her family's vineyard, their vacation home in Tahoe, her connections in the city. Every story was designed to make me feel small, provincial, less than. When I brought out my famous apple pie, the one that won 3 county fairs, she took one bite and pushed it away. "I don't really do sugar," she said with that fake smile. "But I'm sure it's quaint." Garrett didn't notice. He was mesmerized, hanging on her every word, laughing too loud at her cruel jokes about small-town people. When she excused herself to the bathroom, I tried to talk to him. "She seems," I searched for the right word, "different from your usual type." He grabbed my hand, squeezing it with excitement. "That's what I love about her, Mom. She challenges me, pushes me to be better." But I saw the way she looked at my china cabinet, at the family photos on the walls, at everything that made this house a home. She wasn't looking at them with interest. She was calculating what she could replace them with. 3 months later they were engaged. The ring cost more than I made in a year. Sienna made sure to mention that at every opportunity. The wedding planning began immediately, and that's when her true colors started to show. Every tradition I suggested was outdated. Every family recipe for the reception was too heavy. My friends weren't the right crowd for her guest list. But the worst part was watching Garrett change. He started criticizing things he'd never noticed before. My clothes, my car, the way I talked. "Sienna thinks you should update your wardrobe, Mom," he'd say. "Maybe something more modern." When I offered to make his groom's cake, a tradition I'd been planning since he was little, Sienna laughed. "Oh, Marlena, that's sweet, but we've hired professionals. We can't risk anything. Homemade." The word dripped with disdain. Garrett just nodded along, the son I raised disappearing behind designer suits and new opinions that sounded suspiciously like hers. The wedding day broke my heart in ways I didn't expect. I sat in the front row watching my only child marry a woman who had already started erasing me from his life. During the reception, I overheard Sienna talking to her bridesmaids. "Thank God we're moving to the other side of town," she said. "I can't imagine having to see his mother every week. She's so clingy." They laughed, not knowing I was behind the flower arrangement. When it came time for the mother-son dance, Garrett seemed distant, going through the motions. "I love you, baby," I whispered. "I'll always be here for you." That's when Sienna appeared at his shoulder, cutting our dance short. "The photographer needs you," she lied smoothly. As Garrett walked away, she leaned in close. He's mine now, Marlena. Better get used to being second place. I stood there on the dance floor, alone, while she whisked him away to their table. The band played on, but all I could hear was my heart breaking. After the wedding, everything accelerated. Sunday dinners became monthly, then quarterly, then stopped altogether. Phone calls went unanswered. When I dropped by their new house, a massive modern thing that looked like a museum, Sienna would answer the door with barely concealed irritation. "Garrett's not here," she'd say, even when I could see his car in the garage. "You really should call first." When I did call first, there was always an excuse. They were busy, they had plans, they were renovating. The renovations were telling. Every trace of warmth, of personality, of life was stripped away and replaced with cold marble and sharp edges. Just like what she was doing to my son. I tried talking to Garrett alone, but Sienna had perfected the art of never leaving us alone together. She'd appear like a ghost whenever I managed to catch him, always with some urgent need for his attention. "Honey, the designer is on the phone," or "We're late for the Petersons' party." Always something. The isolation was deliberate and cruel. She slowly convinced Garrett that I was the problem. Every concern I raised became evidence of my jealousy. Every attempt to maintain our relationship was interference. She'd twist my words, replay conversations with strategic edits, plant seeds of doubt. "Your mother said the strangest thing today," she'd tell him, then present a warped version of our interaction. When I gave them a family heirloom for their anniversary, my mother's pearl necklace, I found it months later at a pawn shop window. The owner told me a young blonde woman had sold it, claiming it was unwanted junk from her mother-in-law. That night, I cried until I couldn't breathe. Not for the necklace, but for the son I was losing to a woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to remove. Little did I know she was just getting started. The real destruction started 2 years into their marriage, the day Sienna announced she was pregnant. I found out not from my son, but from Facebook, where she'd posted an elaborate announcement with professional photos and a caption that thanked everyone except me. When I called Garrett, hurt and confused, he sounded tired. "Sienna wanted to wait until she was ready to share," he said flatly. "You know how you can be, Mom. She didn't want you to overwhelm her. Overwhelm her." I'd been nothing but supportive, biting my tongue through every insult, every exclusion. But this was my grandchild we were talking about. "Can I at least help with the nursery?" asked hopefully. There was a pause, then Sienna's voice in the background, sharp and commanding. "Actually, Mom," Garrett continued, his voice different now, controlled. "Sienna's mother is handling all that. She has more experience with these things. Her mother lived in Switzerland and had visited exactly twice. But somehow, she was more qualified than the woman who'd raised Garrett alone, who'd been there for every scraped knee and nightmare. The pregnancy became another weapon in Sienna's arsenal. Doctor's appointments. "Family only," she'd say, as if I wasn't family. Baby shower. I wasn't on the planning committee. That honor went to her sorority sisters and work friends. When I showed up with handmade baby blankets I'd spent months knitting, she barely glanced at them before setting them aside. "How crafty," she said, the word sounding like an insult. The other guests, all young, all wealthy, all looking at me like I was some curiosity, tittered politely. Later I found my blankets stuffed in a trash bag in their garage. When I confronted Garrett, he sighed. "Mom, we just have a different aesthetic. Sienna's registered for everything we need." But it wasn't about what they needed. It was about systematically removing any trace of me from their lives, from my grandchild's life. The message was clear. You're not welcome here, you're not wanted here, you're not good enough to be here. When baby Charlotte was born, I wasn't called until 12 hours later. "Sorry, Mom," Garrett said when I rushed to the hospital. It was a crazy night. Sienna's parents flew in from Switzerland. They'd had time to fly in from Europe, but not to call me 20 minutes away. I held my granddaughter for exactly 3 minutes before Sienna declared she needed to nurse. For the next 6 months, every attempt to see Charlotte was met with obstacles. They were tired, the baby was sleeping, they were establishing routines. It wasn't a good time. When I did manage to visit, Sienna would hover, criticizing how I held the baby, questioning every interaction. "Don't kiss her face, germs," she'd snap. "That's not how we do tummy time. Rock her gentler, you're overstimulating her." Nothing I did was right. The woman who'd raised a child alone, who'd run a successful business while nursing her son through everything from colic to college applications, suddenly knew nothing about babies. Garrett stood by, silent, occasionally parroting Sienna's corrections like a trained puppet. The financial manipulation started subtly. Sienna would mention how hard it was to manage their mortgage and Charlotte's expenses on just their salaries. "If only we didn't have to worry about property taxes," she'd sigh dramatically. Garrett would look at me hopefully, and I'd offer to help, of course I would. First it was property taxes, then it was a new car for the baby's safety, then private preschool deposits. Each time, Sienna would accept my money with false gratitude while making it clear she was doing me a favor by allowing me to contribute. But the real snake move came when she suggested I put the house in Garrett's name. "For tax purposes," she explained with that shark smile. "And it protects your assets if you ever need medical care." She played on every fear, every vulnerability. What if I got sick? What if I needed Medicaid? Wouldn't I want to protect Garrett's inheritance? My son, my baby boy, sat there nodding along as she laid out why giving them my house was the responsible thing to do. "We'd never kick you out, Mom," he assured me. "This is just paperwork." I should have known better. I did know better. But I wanted so desperately to believe my son still loved me. The deed transfer was signed on a Tuesday. By Friday, Sienna was already talking about renovations. "This kitchen is so dated," she'd say, running her manicured fingers over my countertops. "And that wallpaper has got to go." My wallpaper, chosen with my late husband, hung with our own hands while Garrett played in his high chair. But I kept quiet, hoping cooperation would buy me peace. Didn't. The comments escalated. My bedroom would make a perfect home gym. The garden was too much maintenance. Why did one person need so much space? Meanwhile, Charlotte was growing and I was missing everything. First steps, first words, first birthday. I saw them all through Facebook posts, carefully curated to show Sienna's parents but never me. When I complained, Garrett would get defensive. "You're being dramatic, Mom. You see her plenty." But plenty had dwindled to supervised monthly visits where I felt like a stranger in my own son's life. Then came the incident that changed everything. Last month, I was babysitting Charlotte. A rare occurrence that only happened because Sienna's regular nanny was sick and her parents were in Europe. Charlotte, now 2, was playing in the living room when she fell and scraped her knee. Nothing serious, just a tiny cut that I cleaned and bandaged with a dinosaur band-aid. She was laughing within minutes, showing me how dinosaurs roar. But when Sienna came home and saw the bandage, she exploded. "You let her get hurt. What were you doing?" she screamed, scooping up Charlotte like I was dangerous. "She was playing," I tried to explain. "Kids fall sometimes. This is why we don't leave her with you." Jenna raged. "You're careless. Negligent." Garrett walked in during her tirade, and instead of defending me, he joined in. "Mom, how could you be so irresponsible?" The boy who'd broken his arm twice, who'd needed stitches 3 times, who I'd nursed through countless childhood injuries, was accusing me of negligence over a band-aid. That night, they told me they needed to reassess my role in Charlotte's life. I went home to my house. Their house now, and cried until my chest hurt. After the band-aid incident, I knew something had shifted. Sienna's campaign against me intensified with frightening precision. She started documenting everything, taking photos of my messy house when I left a coffee cup on the counter, recording conversations without my knowledge, twisting innocent comments into evidence of my supposed decline. "Marlena seemed confused today," she'd tell Garrett loudly on the phone, knowing I could hear. "She called Charlotte by the wrong name." I hadn't, I'd called her Charlie, a nickname I'd used since birth. But Garrett wasn't there to see the truth. He only heard Sienna's version, delivered with fake concern and strategic tears. "I'm just worried about your mom," she'd sigh. "Maybe she needs help." The implication was clear. They were building a case that I was losing my mind, becoming unsafe, unfit to be around my granddaughter. Every normal sign of aging became evidence. Forgot where I put my reading glasses. Cognitive decline. Took a nap in the afternoon. Depression. Disagreed with Sienna. Hostility and paranoia. The gaslighting was masterful. Items would go missing from my house. Things I knew I'd put in specific places. My spare key disappeared, then reappeared in a different drawer. My medication bottles were moved. Photo albums vanished, then showed up in strange locations. When I mentioned these things to Garrett, he'd exchange worried looks with Sienna. "Mom, are you sure you're not just forgetting?" he'd ask gently. "Maybe you should see a doctor." But I wasn't forgetting. I started keeping a journal, documenting everything, taking photos of where I placed things. One day, I caught Sienna on my security camera. She didn't know I'd installed one, moving my purse from the kitchen to the bathroom. When I confronted her, she smiled sweetly. "I was just tidying up, Marlena. You left it in such an odd place." The purse had been on the kitchen table, where I always put it. But who would believe me? The devoted daughter-in-law trying to help, or the paranoid old woman making accusations? 3 months ago, Sienna's parents visited from Switzerland. Suddenly, I was completely excluded from family gatherings. "It's just easier," Garrett explained when I asked why I wasn't invited to Charlotte's second birthday party. "Sienna's parents aren't comfortable with tension." "What tension?" "The tension of having 2 grandmothers who loved the same child." But Hans and Greta Blackwood were everything I wasn't. Wealthy, worldly, still married. They stayed in the guest room that used to be Garrett's childhood bedroom, now stripped of every memory, every baseball trophy and science fair ribbon. They took Charlotte to expensive toy stores, bought her designer clothes, spoke to her in French and German. "Charlotte needs to be multilingual," Sienna explained when I offered to read to my granddaughter. "English-only exposure is limiting." Everything I offered was limiting, apparently. My love, my time, my presence. All impediments to their perfect international family. The financial requests escalated. Sienna needed a new car. The year-old Mercedes wasn't safe enough for Charlotte. They needed a vacation. Stress was bad for their marriage. The house needed a pool. Charlotte should learn to swim properly. Each request came with subtle threats. "We'd hate to have to move somewhere more affordable," Sienna would say. "Somewhere with better schools. Maybe closer to my parents." The message was clear: pay up or lose access completely. I emptied my savings, maxed out credit cards, even sold jewelry my husband had given me. Nothing was ever enough. The requests kept coming, each more audacious than the last. When I finally said I had nothing left to give, Sienna's mask slipped. "Then what good are you?" she snapped. Garrett was in the next room, but he either didn't hear or pretended not to. Later, Sienna apologized with crocodile tears. "I'm just so stressed, Marlena. Being a mother is hard. You understand." But I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was done with me. Last week, everything accelerated. Sienna announced they were thinking of moving to Seattle. "Better opportunities," she said vaguely. "And my cousin lives there. Family support is so important." Her cousin, not me. Family support, not mine. When I broke down crying, begging Garrett not to take Charlotte away, Sienna recorded it on her phone. "See how unstable she is." I heard her whisper to him later. "This isn't healthy for Charlotte." They started having hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Documents appeared on their dining table. Forms for restraining orders, elder care facilities, power of attorney. They wanted me to see them, wanted me to know what was coming. The house felt different, hostile. Sienna changed the locks on the interior doors, claiming Charlotte had learned to open them. But I knew the truth. They were preparing to cage me in or throw me out. Yesterday was my birthday. 68 years old, and I spent it alone. Garrett forgot, or was made to forget. No call, no card, no acknowledgement that I existed. I baked my own cake, sang happy birthday to myself, and wondered how I'd lost everything. That evening, I decided to confront them. I walked to their side of the house. My house, I reminded myself, even if the deed said otherwise, and heard them talking. She's becoming a liability, Sienna was saying. What if she hurts Charlotte? What if she burns the house down? We need to take action. But she's my mother, Garrett said weakly. She gave us everything. Exactly, Sienna replied. She gave it to us. It's ours now. And we need to protect our assets from her decline. That's all I was now. An asset to be managed, a problem to be solved. I stood outside their door, hand raised to knock, and realized I was about to walk into a trap. But I was tired of running, tired of pretending. So I knocked anyway. I knocked on their door, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Sienna opened it, her face shifting from annoyance to fake surprise. Marlena, we were just talking about you. Her smile was all teeth, no warmth. Behind her, Garrett sat at their dining table, papers spread before him. Legal papers. Come in, she said, stepping aside with exaggerated courtesy. We need to have a conversation. The room felt like a courtroom, with me as the defendant. Sienna positioned herself next to Garrett, her hand possessively on his shoulder. Mom, Garrett started, not meeting my eyes. We're concerned about you. Those words, scripted and rehearsed, hit me like physical blows. Concerned? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. About what exactly? Sienna jumped in, eager to present her case. Your behavior has been erratic. The paranoid accusations, the emotional outbursts, forgetting things. We think you need help. Every example she gave was twisted, warped, taken out of context. But she delivered them with such conviction that even I almost believed her version. We've spoken to a lawyer, Garrett said, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold, unfamiliar. This wasn't my son. This was Sienna's creation. These documents would give us power of attorney over your affairs. It's for your own protection. I looked at the papers, saw words like diminished capacity and unable to manage affairs, and felt the room spin. You're trying to have me declared incompetent. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. I'm sharper than both of you combined. I ran a business for 30 years. Sienna's lips curved. See. This hostility, this aggression. It's not normal, Marlena. Everything was a trap. Show emotion. Unstable. Stay calm. Hiding something. Defend yourself. Aggressive. Submit. Admission of guilt. I saw it all so clearly now. The web she'd woven around me. Garrett, I pleaded. Remember when you were 7 and had nightmares? I'd sit with you all night, singing your favorite songs. Remember when you broke your leg and I carried you everywhere for weeks? This isn't you, baby. This isn't who I raised. For a moment, I saw something flicker in Garrett's eyes. Memory, maybe, or buried love. But Sienna squeezed his shoulder, and he hardened again. That's exactly the problem, Mom. You're living in the past. You can't accept that I'm an adult, that I have my own family now. His own family. As if I wasn't family. As if 32 hours of labor and 18 years of single motherhood meant nothing. I accepted your marriage, I said quietly. I accepted being pushed aside, having my granddaughter kept from me, giving you my house. What more could I possibly accept? Sienna laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. You gave us the house because you couldn't maintain it. Don't rewrite history, Marlena. The gaslighting was breathtaking. She'd convinced me to sign it over, and now she was claiming I'd begged them to take it. That's not what happened, I said firmly. You know that's not. What I know, Sienna interrupted, is that you're becoming a danger to yourself and others. What if you leave the stove on? What if you forget Charlotte at the park? I've never forgotten Charlotte anywhere. I shouted, finally losing my composure. You barely let me see her. 2 supervised visits in 6 months is not forgetting. It's being deliberately excluded. My anger was exactly what Sienna wanted. She actually smiled as she pulled out her phone. I'm recording this for our protection, she announced. Marlena, you're becoming agitated. Do you need us to call someone? It was a performance, and we all knew it. She was creating evidence, building her case. What I need, I said, forcing my voice back to calmness, is for my son to remember who he is. Garrett, she's poisoning you against me. Can't you see what's happening? Garrett stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. What's happening is that you're refusing to accept reality. Sign the papers, Mom. Get help. Or. He paused, and I saw Sienna nod slightly, giving him permission to deliver the ultimatum. Or we'll have to take more drastic measures. Drastic measures. I laughed bitterly. Like what? You've already taken my son, my granddaughter, my house, my savings. What's left? Sienna stood too, moving to the door. Your freedom, she said simply. We could have you placed in a facility. Somewhere you'd be supervised. Safe. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. They'd put me in a home, sell my house. Their house. And erase me completely. You wouldn't, I whispered, but looking at their faces, I knew they would. Sienna had planned this all along. Every piece had been carefully placed. It's your choice, Marlena, she said, opening the door. Sign the papers and maintain some dignity, or force us to have you removed. Either way, this living situation is no longer working. I stood on shaking legs, looking at my son one last time. I love you, I said. Despite everything, I love you. And one day, when she's done with you too, you'll remember this moment. Something dark passed over Sienna's face, but Garrett just looked tired. Go back to your side, Mom. Think about what we've said. We'll need an answer by tomorrow. I walked back to my part of the house in a daze. My side. As if I was a tenant in my own home. I sat in my kitchen. For how much longer? And tried to process what had just happened. They wanted me to sign away my rights, my autonomy, my life. And if I didn't, they'd take it anyway. The woman who'd survived widowhood, cancer, and single motherhood was being declared unfit by a son who couldn't even do his own laundry until he was 25. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. I made tea with shaking hands, noticing how Sienna had rearranged my cabinets again. Everything was in the wrong place, designed to make me look confused when I couldn't find things. Such small cruelties but effective. I found my teacup eventually, hidden behind the pasta pot, and sat at my table, thinking. Tomorrow they wanted an answer. Sign my life away or be forced out. But as I sat there, warming my hands on the cup my mother had given me, I realized something. They'd made one mistake in their perfect plan. They'd given me time to think. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I did what I'd always done when faced with impossible situations. I made lists. Not the scattered, panicky kind, but the methodical planning that had helped me build a business from nothing. First, I cataloged my resources. $43 in my wallet. A maxed-out credit card. Car with 200,000 miles on it. Not much, but I'd started with less when Garrett's father died. I had something more valuable than money, though. Information. 3 years of documented incidents, recorded conversations, legal in California with single-party consent, and photographs of Sienna's manipulations. She thought I was a stupid old woman, but I'd been protecting myself since the day I met her. My safety deposit box at First National Bank contained copies of everything, including something Sienna didn't know existed. A recording of her drunkenly bragging to her sister about her plans to get rid of the old bat at last year's Christmas party. She'd been in my kitchen, thinking I was asleep. But insomnia has its advantages. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. It was past midnight, but desperate times called for desperate measures. My first call was to my estranged sister Ramona in Oregon. We hadn't spoken since the money incident, but blood was blood. "Marlena," she answered on the fifth ring, voice thick with sleep. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said simply. "I need help." The story poured out, Sienna, Garrett, the ultimatum. Ramona listened without interrupting, then sighed. "Come here. We'll figure it out together. And Marlena, I'm sorry about the money. I've been too proud to call, but I've saved every penny to pay you back." One lifeline secured. Next, I called my former employee, Destiny Washington. She'd worked at my bakery for 10 years before opening her own place. "Mrs. W." She sounded concerned. "It's late, are you all right?" When I explained, her voice turned steel-hard. "That witch. Pack what you need. I'll wire you bus money to the Western Union. And Mrs. W, I've got a job for you if you want it. My baker just quit." 2 lifelines. The hardest call was to my lawyer. Well, my friend who happened to be a lawyer. Patricia Chan had handled my husband's estate and become a friend over the years. "They can't just take your house, Marlena," she said after I explained. "Even if the deed is in Garrett's name, you have tenant rights. They'd have to formally evict you, which takes months." "But they're threatening to have me declared incompetent," I whispered, afraid they might be listening. Patricia's voice turned professional. "Let them try. You'd need to be evaluated by independent doctors, not just their word." "Marlena, listen carefully. Don't sign anything. If they escalate tomorrow, call 911. Create a record. And get out of there safely as soon as you can. We'll fight this, but not while you're under their roof." Her words gave me strength. I wasn't as powerless as they wanted me to believe. The law, at least, still recognized me as a person with rights. I spent the rest of the night packing strategically. Not obviously. That would tip them off. But important things tucked into my purse, a small bag hidden in my car, documents uploaded to a cloud account Garrett didn't know about. My mother's jewelry, what little was left, went into my bra. Medications into various pockets. I was preparing for war, or at least for survival. As dawn broke, I looked around my bedroom one last time. Wedding photos, Garrett's baby pictures. 40 years of memories on these walls. But memories could travel. What couldn't travel was my dignity if I let them destroy it. I thought about Charlotte, my granddaughter who'd been turned into a weapon against me. Would she remember me? Would she grow up hearing Sienna's version of events, believing her grandmother was crazy, dangerous, someone to be avoided? The thought nearly broke me. But then I remembered something my mother used to say. The truth has a way of surfacing, even when people try to bury it. Charlotte would learn the truth someday. I had to believe that. By 6 a.m. I was dressed and ready. Not in my usual comfortable clothes, but in my best outfit, the one I wore to church. If they were going to throw me out, I'd leave with dignity. I made breakfast as usual, the familiar routine calming my nerves. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. The same breakfast I'd made for decades. Sienna would probably renovate this kitchen next, tear out the cabinets my husband installed, replace the stove where I'd taught Garrett to cook. Let her. She could take the house, but she couldn't take the love that had filled it. As I ate, I thought about what I'd say when they confronted me. No begging, no pleading. Just truth. "I won't sign your papers," I practiced out loud. "Do what you feel you must." Simple, dignified, final. Because I'd realized something during my long night of planning. They thought they were punishing me by casting me out. But maybe, just maybe, they were setting me free. Free from the daily humiliations, the constant gaslighting, the slow death of watching my son disappear. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let go of what's killing you. At 7:30, I heard movement from their side of the house. Garrett's alarm, Sienna's shower, the sounds of their morning routine. In an hour, maybe 2, they'd come for their answer. I straightened my spine, checked my hidden preparations one more time, and waited. Whatever happened next, I was ready. I'd survived worse than Sienna Blackwood. I'd survive this too. And maybe if I was very lucky and very smart, I'd do more than survive. Maybe I'd win. The kitchen clock ticked toward 8 o'clock. each second bringing me closer to the confrontation. But I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in years I felt clear. They wanted me to disappear. Fine. But I'd disappear on my own terms, and I'd take the truth with me. Let them live in their house of lies. Let them explain to Charlotte why Grandma never visits. Let them look over their shoulders, wondering when their carefully constructed story would collapse. 'Cause it would collapse. Evil always does, eventually. And I'd be ready when it did. At exactly 8:47 a.m. they came. I heard Sienna's heels clicking on the hardwood before the knock, sharp, demanding, entitled. I opened the door calmly, noting how they'd positioned themselves. Sienna slightly forward, Garrett behind her like a bodyguard. Or a puppet. "Good morning," I said pleasantly. "Would you like some coffee?" The normalcy threw them off. Sienna's eyes narrowed, searching for the catch. "We're here for your answer, Marlena. The papers." I stepped aside, gesturing to my kitchen table. "Come in. Let's discuss this like civilized people." They exchanged glances but entered, Sienna's nose wrinkling as always at my decor. I poured coffee without asking, using my good china. The set from my wedding that Sienna had once called vintage, in that tone that meant old and worthless. "I've thought about your proposal," I began, sitting down across from them. "And I have some questions." Garrett shifted uncomfortably. He knew that tone. It was the same one I'd used when he was 17 and I'd found marijuana in his room. Calm on the surface, steel underneath. "Questions." Sienna's voice dripped condescension. "It's quite simple, Marlena. You sign, you get help, everyone's happy." I sipped my coffee slowly, making them wait. "Help with what, exactly?" "Because I made a list." I pulled out a notebook, watching Sienna's confidence flicker. "My blood pressure. Perfect at my last checkup. Mental state. My doctor says I'm sharp as ever. Finances. Well, they'd be fine if I hadn't given you everything." I flipped through pages of documentation. Medical records, bank statements, receipts for all the money I'd given them. "So what exactly do I need help with?" Sienna's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the fury beneath. "You're being deliberately obtuse. You know you're not capable of living independently anymore." "Interesting," I said, pulling out another paper. "Because according to my landlord at the bakery, I'm still capable enough to work part-time keeping books. Started last month. Did I forget to mention that?" Hadn't, of course. It was strategic. Proof of competency, evidence of independence. Garrett's face went pale. "You got a job. Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "When would I tell you, Garrett? During our weekly calls you don't answer. At the family dinners I'm not invited to. While playing with the granddaughter I'm not allowed to see." Each word landed like a slap. I saw him flinch, saw the guilt flicker before Sienna's hand on his arm shut it down. "This is exactly what we're talking about," Sienna interjected. "This hostility, this guilt-tripping. It's emotional manipulation." I laughed, actually laughed. "That's rich, coming from you. Should we talk about manipulation, Sienna? Should we discuss the security footage of you moving my belongings to make me look forgetful? The recorded conversations where you tell your sister your plans to get rid of the old bat?" The color drained from her face. "You're lying." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone, found the file. Her voice filled the kitchen, slurred with wine but crystal clear. "Once she signs the papers, we can put her anywhere. Garrett's too weak to stop me. God, I can't wait to gut this ugly house." Garrett's coffee cup hit the table hard. "What is this?" He looked between us, confusion replacing certainty. "When was this recorded?" "Last Christmas," I said quietly. "While you were passed out from her special eggnog. She had quite a lot to say about you two. Would you like to hear that part?" Sienna lunged for my phone, but I was ready, pulling it back. "That's illegal," she shrieked. "You can't record people without consent." "Actually," I said calmly, "in California, only one party needs to consent. Me. I've consulted a lawyer." The mention of a lawyer changed everything. Sienna went from attack to damage control in seconds. Garrett, she's obviously doctored this. You know how easy it is to fake recordings now. But Garrett was looking at her differently, doubt creeping in. Is that why you got me drunk that night? You kept refilling my glass. Baby, you're listening to her lies, Sienna said, but her voice was too high, too desperate. The mask was cracking. I'm not signing anything, I announced, standing up. And I'm not leaving my home without a legal eviction, which my lawyer tells me takes months. During which time I'll be documenting every interaction, every threat, every attempt at intimidation. I moved to the door, opening it. Now, unless you have legal papers requiring my immediate departure, I have work in an hour. My boss is expecting me. They sat frozen, their perfect plan in ruins. Sienna recovered first, her face twisting into something ugly. You think you're so smart, she hissed. But this isn't over. We'll bury you in legal fees. We'll make your life hell. You already have, I replied. The difference is now I'm fighting back. Garrett stood slowly, looking lost. Mom, I don't understand what's happening. My heart broke for him then. My boy, my baby, so tangled in her web he couldn't see the threads. I know you don't, sweetheart. But someday you will. And when that day comes, I'll still be your mother. Come on, Sienna snapped, grabbing Garrett's arm. We're done here. But as they reached the door, she turned back, her mask completely gone now. You want war, old woman. You've got it. By tonight, you'll wish you'd taken our offer. The threat hung in the air after they left. I knew she meant it. Sienna didn't handle losing well, and I just humiliated her in front of Garrett. Whatever came next would be brutal. But I was ready. I locked my door, gathered my hidden bags, and headed to my car. Patricia had been right. I needed to get out while I could. But I'd be back. With lawyers, with evidence, with the truth. The battle for my home, my dignity, my family had just begun. And for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't fighting from my knees. I was standing tall, armed with truth and backed by law. Sienna thought she was dealing with a weak old woman. She was about to learn that 68 years of life had taught me more than she could imagine. The war was on. I made it to my car, but as I turned the key, nothing happened. The engine wouldn't even turn over. Popping the hood, I found cut battery cables. A neat, deliberate sabotage. Sienna wasn't wasting any time. I closed the hood calmly, went back inside, and called Patricia. They've disabled my car. I need extraction. She didn't hesitate. I'm sending an Uber. Be ready in 10 minutes. Don't go back inside for anything. But I needed evidence. Pulling out my phone, I photographed the cut cables, then sent the images to Patricia and uploaded them to my cloud. Every crime Sienna committed was another nail in her coffin. As I waited by the curb, neighbors began emerging for their morning routines. Mrs. Chen watered her roses, pretending not to stare. The Johnsons walked their dog, slowing as they passed. Everyone loved drama when it wasn't theirs. That's when Garrett emerged, looking haggard. Mom, wait. He approached cautiously like I might bite. Sienna's upset. She says things she doesn't mean. Even now he was making excuses for her. She cut my battery cables, Garrett. That's not saying things. That's criminal vandalism. His face went through several expressions. Disbelief, confusion, then a dawning horror. She what? No, that's not. Mom, are you sure? I showed him the photos. He stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. Maybe it was vandals or... Stop. My voice was firm but gentle. Stop making excuses. Stop pretending. Your wife is systematically destroying me, and you're helping her. He flinched. I'm not. I wouldn't. But even he couldn't finish the lie. We both knew what he'd done, what he'd allowed. The Uber pulled up then, saving us both from more painful truths. I'm leaving now, I told him. But I'll be back. With lawyers, with police if necessary. This is my home, bought with your father's death benefits, maintained with my sweat and tears. I won't let her steal it. Mom, please, he started, but Sienna appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of rage. Get inside, she snapped at him. Now. And my son, my 35-year-old successful architect's son, obeyed like a scolded child. The Uber ride to the bank was surreal. The driver chatted about the weather while my life imploded in the rearview mirror. At First National, I emptied my safety deposit box. Documents, recordings, USB drives, and my mother's wedding ring. The only jewelry Sienna hadn't manipulated me into selling. The bank manager, who'd known me for 20 years, noticed my shaking hands. Everything all right, Marlena? Family troubles, I said, which was both understatement and complete truth. From the bank I went to Patricia's office. She took one look at me and poured whiskey despite it being 10 in the morning. Tell me everything. I did, showing her the photos, playing the recordings. Her expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. This is conspiracy, fraud, elder abuse, and about 6 other crimes, she said finally. We can nail her, Marlena. But it'll be ugly. It's already ugly, I replied. At least now it'll be honest. We spent 3 hours documenting everything, preparing files, discussing strategy. Patricia called in favors. A private investigator, a forensic accountant, even a family therapist who specialized in manipulation cases. Sienna's not the first predator to marry for money and power, she explained. But she might be one of the sloppiest. That ego of hers left a trail a mile wide. By afternoon, things were moving fast. The investigator had already discovered interesting facts about Sienna's past. 2 previous engagements broken when the men's families became suspicious, a lawsuit from an elderly employer who'd accused her of theft, settled quietly out of court. She's done this before, Patricia said grimly. Garrett wasn't her first target, just her most successful. The information made me sick. How many families had she destroyed? How many mothers had she erased? But it also gave me hope. Pattern behavior meant evidence. Evidence meant a case. Case meant justice. As we strategized, my phone buzzed with messages. Garrett. Mom, please come home. We can work this out. Sienna. You have 1 hour to return or we call the police. Even Destiny from the bakery. Saw Garrett's wife at the store. She was asking questions about you. Be careful. The war had truly begun, and Sienna was mobilizing. But so was I. Patricia assigned me a bodyguard. Her nephew Marcus, a former Marine who looked like he could bench press a car. Just until we serve papers, she assured me. Can't be too careful with people like Sienna. Marcus drove me to Destiny's bakery, where I'd arranged to stay temporarily. The familiar smell of bread and cinnamon nearly undid me. This had been my world once. Honest work, good people, simple pleasures. Before Sienna poisoned everything. Mrs. W. Destiny hugged me tight. Your room's ready upstairs. And honey, half the old customers have been asking when you're coming back. The warmth of real friendship after years of Sienna's ice was overwhelming. That evening, as I settled into the small apartment above the bakery, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Charlotte, my granddaughter. Grandma. Her little voice was uncertain. Mommy says you're sick. Are you okay? My throat closed. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just staying with friends for a bit. Why can't you stay here? I miss you. In the background I heard Sienna hiss. Give me the phone. Then Charlotte's voice stubborn. No. I want to talk to Grandma. A struggle, a cry, then Sienna. Nice try, Marlena. Using a child. Pathetic. The line went dead. Marcus, who'd been quietly playing cards at the kitchen table, looked up. That sounded rough. She's using my granddaughter as a weapon, I said, my voice hollow. What kind of person does that? The kind who's desperate, he replied. And desperate people make mistakes. He was right. That phone call was a mistake. It showed Charlotte missed me, remembered me, despite Sienna's efforts. It was proof that their perfect family narrative had cracks. I documented the call, sent the information to Patricia. Every interaction was evidence now. Every cruelty would come back to haunt them. That night, I lay in an unfamiliar bed above the bakery where I'd spent so many happy years. Below, the ovens would start preheating at 4 a.m., just like always. Life went on, even when your heart was breaking. Tomorrow Patricia would file our papers. Tomorrow, the legal battle would officially begin. But tonight I held on to Charlotte's voice. I miss you. Sienna could take my house, my son, my savings. But she couldn't take that. My granddaughter loved me, missed me, wanted me. And for her, I'd fight through hell itself. The war wasn't just on. It was personal. And I was done being the victim. The next morning at 4 a.m., I was in the bakery kitchen with Destiny, my hands covered in flour, kneading dough like I had for 30 years. The familiar rhythm calmed my racing thoughts. Just like old times, Destiny said, sliding a tray of croissants into the oven. Except now you're hiding from your crazy daughter-in-law instead of just avoiding my terrible jokes. I managed a laugh. Your jokes weren't that bad. Mrs. W., I once made a 12-minute pun about rye bread. Customers left. The normalcy felt surreal after yesterday's chaos. But at 8 a.m. sharp, Patricia called. Papers are filed. Restraining order, elder abuse charges, fraud investigation, and petition to reverse the property transfer under duress. Marlena, once Sienna is served, expect fireworks. I wasn't wrong. By noon my phone was exploding. Garrett called 17 times. I didn't answer. Sienna sent texts ranging from threats, "You'll regret this," to fake concern, "We're worried about your mental state," to outright lies. "Garrett's in the hospital, call immediately." I forwarded everything to Patricia. Let Sienna hang herself with her own words. At 2 p.m. Marcus got an alert on his phone. They've been served, he announced. Both of them at the house. 20 minutes later, Garrett finally got through by calling the bakery's landline. Destiny handed me the phone with a grimace. "Mom." His voice was strangled. "What have you done?" "The police were here. Sienna's having a breakdown." Charlotte saw everything. "What I've done?" Kept my voice steady. "I've protected myself legally from abuse and fraud. What you've done is enable a criminal." "Criminal?" "Mom, she's my wife." "Yes, and Charles Manson was somebody's husband too. Doesn't make him less guilty." Harsh maybe, but I was done sugarcoating reality for him. "The restraining order says I can't come within 500 feet of you," he continued, sounding lost. "My own mother has a restraining order against me." "It's temporary and precautionary," I explained. "Remove Sienna from the equation, agree to mediation, and we can modify it. Continue supporting her crimes, and it stays." There was a long pause. Then quietly, "She's saying you're lying about everything. That you doctored the recordings, that you're having some kind of breakdown. She has a therapist willing to testify that you show signs of dementia." Course she did. Sienna had been planning this for months, maybe years. "Let her bring her bought therapist," I said. "I have 3 independent doctors who've examined me this week. All confirm I'm completely competent. Plus security footage, bank records, and 60 witnesses to her behavior over 5 years. 60. He sounded stunned. "Mom, what are you talking about? Did you think people didn't notice, Garrett? Every neighbor who saw her lock me out. Every friend she banned from the house. Every family member she insulted until they stopped coming. They all remember. They're all willing to testify." The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, "I need to see you. Without lawyers, without Sienna. Just us. Please." My heart cracked. "The restraining order doesn't apply if you invite me. Please, Mom. I'm begging you." Patricia advised against it. Marcus flat out refused to allow it, but I was tired of other people making my decisions. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., at the cafe on 3rd Street. Public place. You come alone or I leave." He agreed immediately. That evening, Sienna escalated. Unable to contact me directly, she went after my support system. Destiny received a call from the health department about an anonymous complaint. Patricia's office got a bomb threat that evacuated the building. My old customers started getting calls claiming the bakery was closed due to health violations. Each attack was documented, reported, added to our case. "She's panicking," Patricia observed after the 5th incident. Good. Panicked people make mistakes. But Sienna's biggest mistake came that night. Security footage from my house. Yes, I'd installed cameras months ago without telling them. Showed her loading boxes into a U-Haul. She was stealing everything she could before the court could freeze assets. Furniture, electronics, even photo albums. But in her greed, she forgot about the cameras. We had her on tape, committing felony theft. "It's beautiful," Marcus said, watching the footage. "She's literally creating evidence against herself." Patricia was already on the phone with the police. Within an hour, officers were at the house. The U-Haul was stopped 3 blocks away. Sienna was arrested for grand theft, violating the restraining order. She wasn't supposed to dispose of disputed assets, and destruction of evidence. She'd been caught on camera burning documents in the backyard. Garrett called from the police station at midnight. "Mom." He sounded broken. "She's been arrested. They have her in custody. Charlotte's with Sienna's parents. I don't understand what's happening." "Your wife is a con artist, Garrett. That's what's happening. And now she's facing consequences." "But she said. She told me you were the one who." He couldn't even finish. The cognitive dissonance was too strong. Everything he'd believed was crumbling. "Tomorrow," I said gently. "We'll talk tomorrow. Just don't bail her out tonight. Let her sit. Think about Charlotte, about what's best for her." He made a sound like a wounded animal. "I don't know what's real anymore." "I'm real," I told him. "Your mother who loves you is real. The woman who raised you, who sacrificed everything for you, who's been trying to save you for 5 years. I'm real. Everything else. That's what we need to figure out." After we hung up, I sat in Destiny's kitchen, drinking tea and thinking. Sienna was in jail. Garrett was finally seeing cracks in her facade. Charlotte was safe with the Swiss grandparents, who Patricia had already contacted with our side of the story. The tide was turning. But wars aren't won in a day. Sienna would make bail, would hire lawyers, would fight dirty. She had Garrett's money, my money really, to fund her battle. She had his psychological dependence, 5 years of gaslighting and manipulation. She had Charlotte as leverage. But I had truth. I had evidence. I had the law. And most importantly, I had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Tomorrow I'd face my son. I'd try to cut through years of lies to find the boy I'd raised. It might work, it might not. But I'd try. Because that's what mothers do. We fight for our children even when they're fighting against us. Even when it breaks our hearts. Even when the world tells us to give up. The battle was far from over. But for tonight, Sienna was behind bars and I was free. It was a start. I arrived at the cafe 30 minutes early, choosing a corner table with clear sight lines to both entrances. Marcus sat 3 tables away, pretending to read a newspaper. Patricia wanted to come too, but I needed this conversation to be just us, mother and son, without legal warfare between us. At exactly 10 a.m., Garrett walked in, and I almost gasped. He looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, red-rimmed eyes. This wasn't the polished architect Sienna had created. This was my boy, stripped of pretense, drowning in confusion. He sat down carefully like everything hurt. "You look terrible," I said. "Thanks. You look good. Younger somehow." It was true. 5 days of freedom from Sienna's toxic presence had already lifted years from my shoulders. "Garrett, before we talk, I need to know. Are you recording this?" He flinched. "No. No more recordings. No more games. I need to understand, Mom. Everything I thought I knew is falling apart." "Then let's start with truth," I said, signaling the waitress for coffee. "Ask me anything. I'll answer honestly." He stared at his hands for a long moment. The recordings of Sienna. Are they real? Every word. I have timestamps, metadata, originals stored in 3 locations. Your wife has been planning to discard me since the day you married. I'm sorry, baby, but it's true. He absorbed this like a physical blow. The house. Did we pressure you? You know you did. She convinced you it was for my benefit, but we both know the truth. I was manipulated, gaslit, emotionally blackmailed. I gave you everything because I thought it would keep you in my life. Instead, it gave her the power to throw me away. But you were becoming forgetful, he protested weakly. Things were misplaced, you seemed confused. 'Cause she was moving things. I have security footage, Garrett. Time-stamped video of Sienna entering my space and deliberately relocating items to make me seem senile. It's called gaslighting. Look it up. The coffee arrived, giving us both a moment to regroup. Garrett's hands shook as he lifted his cup. Charlotte, he said finally. She keeps asking for you. Sienna told her you were dangerous, but Charlotte doesn't believe it. She said, Grandma gives the best hugs. Dangerous people don't hug like that. Tears burned my eyes. That little girl is the only pure thing in this mess. Whatever happens between us, Garrett, protect her. Don't let her become Sienna's next victim. Victim. He tested the word like foreign cuisine. You really think? God, Mom, when you put it all together it sounds insane. But living it day by day it just seemed normal. Like you were the problem, like we were protecting ourselves. That's how abuse works, I said gently. Incrementally. Each boundary pushed slightly further. Each cruelty explained away, until you're living in hell and calling it home. He laughed bitterly. Home. She's already talking about selling the house. Said it has bad energy now. A house, Mom. The one you and Dad bought. Let her try. My lawyers will tie it up in court for years. Your lawyers? He looked at me with something like awe. When did my sweet bakery-running mother become someone with lawyers and bodyguards and restraining orders? The day my son screamed at me to get out or he'd call the cops, I said simply. Rock bottom has a way of revealing what you're made of. And I'm made of stronger stuff than Sienna calculated. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, normal people lived normal lives, oblivious to the war at our little table. She's saying you're trying to destroy our family, Garrett said eventually. That you're jealous, vindictive, that you can't handle getting older. I'm trying to save our family, I corrected. What she built isn't family. It's a hostage situation. And aging. Baby, I've earned every gray hair, every wrinkle. What I can't handle is being erased by a con artist who saw your good heart as a weakness to exploit. Con artist. There was again that testing of reality. Do you really believe that? I don't believe it. I know it. Your wife has a history, Garrett. 2 previous engagements broken when families got suspicious. An elderly employer who accused her of theft. A pattern of targeting vulnerable men with assets. My investigator found it all in public records. You weren't her first mark, just her most successful. The color drained from his face entirely. No, that's not. She said her exes were abusive. Said her old boss was senile. And what's she saying about me? Asked pointedly. Same story, different victim. It's her playbook, Garrett. She's not creative, just consistent. He buried his face in his hands. I'm such an idiot. You tried to warn me. Everyone tried to warn me. But she was so beautiful, so confident. She made me feel special. You are special, I said firmly. That's why she targeted you. Predators don't go after the weak. They go after the kind, the trusting, the ones with something to take. Your goodness isn't stupidity, son. It's what makes you worth saving. When he looked up, tears were streaming down his face. What do I do, Mom? She's Charlotte's mother. She's my wife. I can't just. I don't know how to untangle this. One thread at a time, I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. First, protect Charlotte. Document everything. Get a good lawyer. Not one Sienna chooses. Start individual therapy. And Garrett, stop telling Sienna about our conversations. She's not your partner. She's your problem. She'll destroy me, he whispered. Take Charlotte, take everything. She'll try, I agreed. But she's already overplayed her hand. Theft charges, fraud, elder abuse. She's looking at prison time if convicted. Her leverage is disappearing. But you need to decide, baby. Are you going to keep enabling her? Or are you going to save yourself and your daughter? He squeezed my hand tight, like when he was little and scared of thunderstorms. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, I said firmly. You're my son. You survived your father's death, my cancer, building your career from nothing. You're stronger than you know. Sienna convinced you otherwise because weak people are easier to control. But you're not weak, Garrett. You're just lost. And lost people can find their way home. We talked for 2 more hours. He asked about the evidence, about my plans, about how we'd gotten so far from Sunday dinners and birthday cakes. I told him everything. The fear, the pain, the moment I decided to fight back. By the end, he wasn't the same man who'd walked in. Still conflicted, still scared, but something had shifted. The spell was breaking. As we prepared to leave, he asked, "Can I hug you?" I know the restraining order says. The restraining order is paper. You're my son. I stood and embraced him, feeling how thin he'd gotten, how his expensive suit hung loose on his frame. Sienna had been devouring him too, just more slowly than me. "I love you, Mom," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know, baby. We'll figure this out. Together." As he left, Marcus appeared at my elbow. "That went well." "It's a start," I said, watching my son walk away, shoulders straightened just a little. Just a start. But starts were how all journeys began. And maybe, just maybe, I was getting my son back. The war with Sienna was far from over, but I just recruited an ally from inside enemy territory. The most important ally. The one worth fighting for all along. 3 days after our cafe meeting, Garrett did something that shocked everyone. He refused to bail Sienna out. She'd been sitting in county jail for 96 hours. Her pristine image crumbling with each passing moment. Her lawyer, a slick man named Thornton who'd clearly been paid in advance, called me personally. "Mrs. Whitmore, this vindictive prosecution helps no one. Surely we can reach an understanding." "Certainly," I replied. "She confesses to fraud, returns everything she stole, and agrees to supervised visitation with Charlotte. Then we can talk." He hung up on me. But Sienna's parents didn't. Hans Blackwood called that evening. His Swiss accent thick with distress. "Marlena, please. This is destroying our family. Charlotte cries every night. Can't we resolve this quietly?" I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "Your daughter has been systematically abusing me for 5 years, Hans. She stole my home, my savings, my son. Quiet resolution was what I wanted. She chose war instead. But Charlotte is exactly why I'm fighting. She deserves better than a mother who uses her as a weapon. If you're truly concerned about your granddaughter, help Garrett get custody. Otherwise, you're just enabling Sienna like everyone else has." The next morning, Patricia called with interesting news. "Sienna's accounts are frozen per court order, but we found something. She's been siphoning money from Garrett's business account for months. Nearly $200,000 in unauthorized transfers to an account in the Caymans. She was planning to run, I realized. Setting up her escape route. With your money," Patricia added grimly. "Every dollar traced back to either your gifts to them or equity from your house. She's been liquidating your life piece by piece." I felt sick but not surprised. Of course Sienna had an exit strategy. Predators always do. But she'd gotten greedy, stayed too long, pushed too hard. Now her escape fund was evidence of embezzlement. That afternoon Garrett came to the bakery. Marcus let him in after checking for wires or weapons. We couldn't be too careful. He looked better, showered and shaved, wearing jeans instead of a suit. I hired a divorce attorney, he said without preamble. And a forensic accountant. You were right, Mom. About everything. I set down the dough I'd been kneading and really looked at my son. What changed your mind? Charlotte, he said simply. I went to pick her up from Sienna's parents and she asked me, Daddy, why does Mommy lie about Grandma? When I asked what she meant, she said Sienna told her you were dead. For months, Mom. My wife told our daughter you were dead while you were living in the same house. The cruelty took my breath away. That's psychological abuse. Of a child. Her own child. I know, Garrett said, his voice breaking. What kind of person does that? What kind of mother? He slumped into a chair, looking lost. I keep thinking about all the times you tried to tell me. All the signs I ignored. Christ, Mom, she had me convinced you were the enemy. Every complaint you made proved her point. That you were jealous, unstable, trying to break us up. It was like being hypnotized. It's called coercive control, I said gently. And you're not stupid for falling for it. She's very good at what she does. Too good, he agreed. Did you know she has 3 different social media accounts? Different names, different personas. One where she's a struggling single mother, another where she's a wealthy socialite, a third where she's some kind of spiritual guru. All hunting grounds for her next victim. Patricia had found those 2. Sienna's digital footprint was a masterclass in deception. The question now, I said carefully, is what you want to do about it. I want my daughter safe, he said immediately. I want my mother back in my life. I want to undo 5 years of damage. And I want Sienna to face consequences for what she's done. Music to my ears, but I needed to be sure. This will get ugly, Garrett. She'll claim abuse, manipulation, anything to paint herself as the victim. She'll try to take Charlotte, demand alimony, destroy your reputation. Are you prepared for that? He met my eyes and I saw steel there. My boy was finally growing a spine. Let her try. I have the best teacher in fighting back. He gestured to me. Turns out my mother is a warrior. Who knew? Mothers have always been warriors, I said. We just fight differently. We spent the next hour strategizing. Garrett had access to information I didn't. Sienna's passwords, she used the same one for everything. Her daily routines, her weaknesses. She's terrified of being poor, he revealed. Not just financially uncomfortable, truly poor. She grew up wealthy, lost it all when her father's business collapsed. That's what drives her. Fear of returning to powerlessness. It explained everything. The desperate need for control, the hoarding of resources, the exit strategies. Sienna wasn't just greedy. She was scared. A terrified animal backed into a corner. That makes her more dangerous, I warned. Desperate people do desperate things. As if to prove my point, Garrett's phone rang. His lawyer. Sienna had made bail, posted by a friend none of us knew existed. She was out, and her first stop had been Charlotte's school. She can't take her, Garrett said, panicking. The restraining order only covers you and me, not Charlotte, I reminded him. Go. Take Marcus with you. They left in a rush, leaving me alone with my fears. Sienna out of jail was Sienna planning revenge. She'd lost control of the narrative, lost her primary source of income, lost her hold over Garrett. A wounded predator with nothing left to lose. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Answered cautiously. Hello, Marlena. Sienna's voice was different. Gone was the fake sweetness, the calculated charm. This was her real voice. Cold, sharp, venomous. Sienna. Violating the restraining order already. Oh, I'm not calling you. I'm calling a phone that happens to be near you. Legal technicality. She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. You think you've won. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I'm going to destroy you, your son, everything you love. And I'm going to do it legally, systematically, completely. Like you destroyed your previous victims. I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. Oh, we know about them, Sienna. Every con, every elderly person you've robbed, every family you've torn apart. Your past is catching up. Silence. Then. You're lying. Am I? Check the news tomorrow. Amazing what journalists find interesting these days. Serial con artist targets elderly. Makes a great headline, don't you think? More silence. I could practically hear her calculating, recalibrating. This isn't over, she finally said. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. But Sienna, you should know something. I've survived worse than you. I buried a husband, beat cancer, raised a son alone, built a business from nothing. You're not a crisis. You're an inconvenience. And I've been handling inconveniences for 68 years. She hung up without another word. I immediately called Patricia, reported the contact, then sat back to think. Sienna was out, angry and planning something. But for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't facing her alone. Garrett was free of her spell, the law was on my side, and the truth was coming out. She could threaten all she wanted. The war was turning in my favor, and we both knew it. Tomorrow, the newspaper article would run. Patricia's investigator had media contacts. The day after, Garrett's divorce papers would be filed. By week's end, criminal charges would be formally pressed. Sienna's house of cards was collapsing, and she'd built it herself. I returned to my dough, kneading with steady rhythm. Bread was honest work. Flour, water, yeast, time. No lies, no manipulation, just simple ingredients becoming something nourishing. Unlike Sienna's world of smoke and mirrors, some things remained real and true. And truth, as my mother always said, has a way of rising to the surface. Just like good bread. The newspaper article hit like a tsunami. The Black Widow of Fresno, how Sienna Blackwood targeted 3 families, ran on the front page of the local section, complete with photos from her various personas and testimonies from previous victims. My phone exploded with calls from neighbors, friends, even strangers who'd suffered similar cons. But the real explosion came from Sienna herself. She arrived at the bakery at 7 a.m. Her perfect facade cracked beyond repair. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared, her usually perfect hair tangled. "You did this," she screamed at the locked door, pounding on the glass. "You destroyed my life." Marcus stepped out from behind the counter. His presence enough to make her step back. But she kept screaming. "I'll sue you for defamation. Libel. I'll take everything." Destiny called the police while I watched the woman who'd tormented me for 5 years fall apart on my doorstep. There was no satisfaction in it, only sadness. This is what evil looked like when cornered. Not powerful, just pathetic. The police arrived within minutes. Officer Chen, who'd known me since my bakery's grand opening, took one look at the situation and sighed. "Mrs. Blackwood, you're violating a restraining order." "She's lying." Sienna pointed at me through the glass. "Everything in that article is lies. I'm a good mother, a good wife. Ma'am, you need to come with us." As they led her away, she turned back one last time. "Charlotte will grow up hating you," she spat. "I'll make sure of it." After she was gone, I found myself shaking. Not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of her hatred. Destiny brought me tea. Her hand steady on my shoulder. "You okay, Mrs. W?" "I've been better," I admitted. "But I've also been worse. She can't hurt me anymore. She's just noise now." But noise could still damage, as we learned that afternoon. Sienna, out on bail again, had gone to Charlotte's school with forged custody papers, claiming Garrett had agreed to let her take their daughter on vacation. Thank God the school secretary was sharp and called Garrett to verify. He arrived to find Sienna trying to force Charlotte into a car. "Daddy!" Charlotte's cry could be heard on the security footage Patricia obtained later. "I don't want to go. I want Grandma." That's when Sienna made her biggest mistake. In full view of teachers, parents, and security cameras, she slapped Charlotte across the face. "You don't have a grandmother," she screamed. "She's dead, remember? Dead." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Charlotte, brave little Charlotte, said clearly, "You're lying. Liars go to jail. Like you did." Garrett scooped up his daughter while parents formed a protective barrier. The school security guard, a retired cop, detained Sienna until police arrived. This time she was charged with attempted kidnapping, assault on a minor, and forgery. No bail. The judge, reviewing her pattern of escalation, deemed her a flight risk and danger to the community. Charlotte was safe, but traumatized. That evening, Garrett brought her to the bakery. "She wants to see you," he said simply. "Needs to know you're really alive." When Charlotte saw me, she flew into my arms. "Grandma, Mommy said you were dead, but I knew she was lying because dead people can't make cookies, and Daddy said you still make the best cookies, and liars are bad, and Mommy's a bad liar, and—" "Breathe, sweetheart," I said, holding her tight. "I'm here. I'm alive. And yes, I still make the best cookies." We spent the evening decorating sugar cookies while Charlotte processed her trauma in the way children do. Through play and questions. Why did Mommy lie? Sometimes people lie when they're scared or angry. Was she scared of you? I considered my answer carefully. Maybe she was scared that Daddy and I love each other, and she wanted all his love for herself. But that's silly because love isn't like cookies. You don't run out. There's always enough to share. Charlotte seemed to accept this, focused on applying sprinkles with scientific precision. Garrett watched from the doorway, tears streaming down his face. His daughter and mother together again, doing something as simple and profound as making cookies. Later, after Charlotte fell asleep on the bakery's couch, Garrett and I talked. "Her lawyer called," he said. "Wants to make a deal. Sienna will sign away parental rights in exchange for dropping the criminal charges." "No," I said immediately. "She assaulted Charlotte. That's a line you don't come back from. But if she maintains rights, she could get visitation eventually. Supervised, but still." He looked torn. "I don't want Charlotte going through years of custody battles." It was an impossible choice. Justice or peace. Accountability or freedom. "What does your lawyer say?" "That will win either way, but one path is faster, cleaner. The other could take years and cost Charlotte's college fund." I thought about it, remembering my own years of single parenthood, the choices I'd made to protect Garrett. "Ask Charlotte's therapist," I finally suggested. "This affects her most. Let the professional guide us." He nodded, then said quietly, "I'm selling the house." "Garrett, no. That's your home." "It's not," he interrupted. "It was your home that I let her poison. Every room has bad memories now. Charlotte wakes up screaming, thinking she's trapped. We need a fresh start." "Where will you go?" "There's a smaller place near the bakery," he said with a small smile. "Close to you. If you'll have us back in your life." "Oh baby," I said, pulling him into a hug. "You never left my life. You were just lost for a while." We stayed like that, mother and son, while his daughter slept peacefully for the first time in days. Outside life went on. But inside our little bakery bubble, healing had begun. The war wasn't over. There would be lawyers and court dates and difficult decisions ahead. But the tide had turned decisively. Sienna was in jail, Charlotte was safe, and Garrett was free. And I was no longer the woman crying in the rain, cast out of her own home. I was Marlena Whitmore, survivor and fighter, mother and grandmother. I was home. The trial began 6 months later on a crisp February morning. I sat in the courtroom's front row, Patricia on one side, Garrett on the other. Across the aisle, Sienna's parents looked hollow, aged by their daughter's crimes. They'd tried everything. Best lawyers money could buy, character witnesses, even a psychiatrist claiming Sienna suffered from stress-induced dissociation. But evidence doesn't lie. The prosecution presented a devastating case. Security footage, financial records, testimonies from 3 previous victims, and most damning, Sienna's own recorded words. When they played the Christmas recording where she called me the old bat and detailed her plans, several jurors visibly recoiled. Sienna sat at the defense table in a conservative suit, trying to look vulnerable. But I saw her real face when she thought no one was watching. Calculating, furious, unrepentant. She'd lost weight in jail. Her designer glow replaced by institutional pallor. Still beautiful, but now everyone could see the poison beneath. On day 3 I testified. Patricia had prepared me well, but nothing really prepares you for facing your abuser in court. Mrs. Whitmore, the prosecutor began, can you describe your relationship with the defendant before she married your son? I spoke clearly, simply, telling the story of slow isolation, financial manipulation, gaslighting. When I described being thrown out in the rain, Sienna actually smirked. The jury saw it. Were you afraid of Mrs. Blackwood? The prosecutor asked. No, I said, looking directly at Sienna. I was afraid of losing my son. She used that fear against me. But fear of her. Well, bullies are only scary until you stand up to them. The defense attorney tried to paint me as a jealous mother-in-law, clinging to her son, making up stories for attention. But Patricia had armed the prosecution with receipts, dates, documentation. Every accusation was met with evidence. When he suggested I'd entrapped Sienna, I almost laughed. Sir, I'm a 68-year-old baker. She's a 35-year-old con artist. Who do you think was more likely to entrap whom? The most powerful testimony came from someone unexpected. Hans Blackwood, Sienna's father. The prosecution called him as a hostile witness, but on the stand, something broke in him. I failed her, he said quietly, looking at his daughter. I knew she had problems, even as a child. The lying, the manipulation. We got her help, therapy, everything. But we also enabled her, cleaned up her messes, paid off her victims to avoid scandal. He detailed years of Sienna's cons, starting in high school. The elderly teacher she'd stolen from. The college roommate she'd gaslight into a breakdown. The string of broken engagements. We thought marriage would settle her, he continued. Garrett seemed stable, kind. We hoped. His voice broke. We hoped she'd change. Instead, she got worse. And that little girl, our granddaughter, deserves better than what we gave Sienna, which was excuses instead of accountability. The courtroom was silent. Sienna stared at her father with naked hatred. But Hans wasn't done. I've transferred $500,000 to Mr. Whitmore. Repayment for everything my daughter stole, plus damages. It won't fix the pain she caused, but perhaps it can help rebuild what she destroyed. Garrett testified on day 5. My son, my baby boy, taking the stand against the woman he'd loved. He spoke about the slow realization of her manipulations, the moment he understood Charlotte was being damaged, the decision to choose truth over comfortable lies. I loved who I thought she was, he said simply. But that person never existed. The real Sienna Blackwood is a predator who saw my mother's love as a resource to exploit and my daughter as a tool to control. I'm testifying to make sure she never does this to another family. When the defense tried to claim he was a scorned husband seeking revenge, Garrett pulled out his phone. I have 16 voicemails from my wife, left after she was arrested. Would you like to hear them? The judge allowed it. Sienna's voice filled the courtroom, alternating between threats. I'll destroy you, manipulation. Charlotte needs her mother, and bizarre denials. This is all your mother's delusion. By the 5th message, where she detailed how she'd put that old bitch in the ground where she belongs, even her lawyer looked defeated. Charlotte didn't testify. We'd all agreed to spare her that trauma. But her therapist did, describing the psychological damage of being told her grandmother was dead, the confusion and fear Sienna had instilled. This child was systematically emotionally abused, Dr. Martinez stated. Used as a weapon in her mother's campaign against Mrs. Whitmore. It will take years to undo this damage. The defense's case was weak. Character witnesses who barely knew Sienna, a therapist who'd met her twice, attempts to discredit evidence that was ironclad. When Sienna herself took the stand, it was a disaster. She couldn't keep her story straight, contradicted previous statements, and eventually snapped at her own lawyer. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered completely. "They're all lying," she screamed. "That old woman poisoned my husband against me. She's the manipulator. She's the abuser." The judge had to call a recess. When we returned, Sienna was subdued, medicated perhaps. But the damage was done. The jury had seen the real woman behind the performance. Closing arguments were swift. The prosecution laid out a pattern of elder abuse, fraud, child endangerment, and attempted kidnapping spanning years. The defense claimed mental illness, stress, miscommunication. Anything but accountability. As the jury filed out to deliberate, I felt oddly calm. Whatever happened, I'd spoken my truth. I'd stood up to my abuser and protected my family. Win or lose, I was free. The deliberation took 4 hours. When the jury returned, the foreman stood with a grave expression. On the count of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, guilty. On the count of child endangerment, guilty. On the count of attempted kidnapping, guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The word rang out like church bells, each one lifting years of weight from my shoulders. Sienna didn't react at first, sitting frozen as reality sank in. Then she turned to stare at me with such venom that the bailiff stepped closer. "You did this," she mouthed. "No," I thought. "You did this. I just survived it." Sentencing would come later, but the prosecutor assured us she was looking at serious time. Multiple felonies, multiple victims. No remorse. The judge would not be lenient. As they led Sienna away in handcuffs, she managed one last manipulation. "Charlotte," she cried out. "Mommy loves you." But Charlotte wasn't there to hear it. She was at school, learning to write her letters, playing with friends, being a normal child. Safe from her mother's poison, finally and forever. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. But I had nothing to say that hadn't been said in court. I was tired, relieved, and ready to rebuild. "Come on," Garrett said, taking my arm. "Let's go home." Such a simple word, but it meant everything. Not a building or an address, but the people who love you, the bonds that survive betrayal, the choice to heal together. We drove to the bakery, where destiny had prepared a quiet celebration. No fanfare, just family and close friends, good food and gentle joy. Charlotte ran to greet us, flour in her hair from helping bake. "Grandma, I made cookies. They're not as good as yours, but destiny said practice makes perfect." I hugged her tight, breathing in her little girl scent of playground and promise. "Everything you make is perfect to me, sweetheart." And in that moment, surrounded by love and loyalty, I knew we'd won more than a court case. We'd won our lives back. The reckoning had come, justice had been served, and now, finally, we could heal. 2 years passed like seasons of healing. The house, my house, sold quickly once Sienna's legal claims were dismissed. Garrett used his portion to buy a modest home 3 blocks from the bakery, with a garden where Charlotte could play and a spare room I helped decorate for my visits. We didn't need the big house anymore. We'd learned that home was about people, not square footage. I used my portion of the sale plus Hans Blackwood's restitution to do something I'd dreamed about for years: expand the bakery. We bought the empty shop next door, knocked through the wall, and created Marlena's Kitchen. Part bakery, part cafe, part community gathering space. Destiny became my partner, not just employee. We hired 2 young bakers, both single mothers who needed flexible schedules. Paying it forward. Destiny called it. Called it good business. Women who've struggled make the most dedicated workers. Charlotte flourished in her new life. The nightmares faded, replaced by normal childhood concerns like spelling tests and playground politics. She spent afternoons at the bakery doing homework, weekends helping me develop new recipes. At 8 years old, she could frost a cake better than most adults. "I want to be like you when I grow up," she announced one day, covered in chocolate frosting. "A baker?" "Yes." "A fighter," she said seriously. "But one who makes cookies." From the mouths of babes. Garrett threw himself into healing with the same intensity he'd once reserved for architecture. Therapy twice a week, support groups for survivors of narcissistic abuse, books about manipulation and recovery. He even started a blog, anonymous but honest, about being a man who'd been emotionally abused. "The shame is the worst part," he told me one evening. "Feeling stupid for not seeing it, weak for letting it happen. But the therapist says shame is just another tool abusers use to keep victims quiet." He was dating again cautiously. A fellow architect named James who understood boundaries and respected our family dinners. Charlotte adored him, especially when he helped her build elaborate Lego cities. The legal aftermath dragged on, but mostly without our involvement. Sienna was sentenced to 12 years. 6 for the elder abuse and fraud, 6 more for child endangerment and attempted kidnapping. She'd serve at least 8 before parole eligibility. Her lawyer filed appeals, of course, but each was dismissed. The evidence was too overwhelming, the pattern too clear. She wrote letters at first. To Garrett, to Charlotte, even to me. We returned them unopened, per our lawyer's advice. Eventually they stopped coming. Prison, it seemed, had finally taught Sienna that some bridges, once burned, stayed ash. Hans and Greta Blackwood stayed in touch, surprisingly. They video-called Charlotte weekly, sent appropriate gifts, respected boundaries. "We failed our daughter," Greta told me during one visit. "We won't fail our granddaughter." They were in therapy too, confronting their enabling, their wealth as solution mindset. It was painful to watch but necessary. Charlotte deserved grandparents who'd learned from their mistakes. My own healing was quieter but no less profound. The hypervigilance faded slowly. I stopped checking locks obsessively, stopped flinching when someone knocked on my door. Trust returned in small doses. I joined a support group for elder abuse survivors, sharing my story with others who'd been targeted by family members. "The shame isn't ours," became our motto. "Survival is our victory." Patricia remained a friend beyond legal services. We had lunch monthly, discussing everything from grandchildren to legal reform. She was pushing for stronger elder abuse laws, using my case as an example. "What happened to you happens every day," she said. "But most victims don't have your resources or support system. We need better protections." I testified before the state legislature about my experience. Speaking publicly was terrifying but necessary. If my story could help pass laws protecting others, the fear was worth it. The bill passed 6 months later. Marlena's Law, increasing penalties for financial elder abuse and making it easier for victims to recover assets. Life developed new rhythms. Sundays were family dinners. Garrett, Charlotte, James, Destiny and her kids, sometimes Patricia, always love and laughter. Holidays were celebrated with joy instead of dread. Charlotte's birthdays became productions at the bakery, with her friends decorating their own cupcakes. "Remember when we couldn't see each other?" she asked during her 9th birthday party. "That was sad." "Yes, it was," I agreed. "But we're together now. Forever. Forever." The promise felt solid, unshakable. We'd been tested by fire and emerged stronger. Sienna had tried to destroy us but only revealed what we were made of. Love, resilience, and the fierce protectiveness of family. Business boomed. Our story had made the news, and people came from across town to support that brave baker lady. But they stayed for the food, the warmth, the sense of community we'd built. The bakery became a gathering place for survivors, seniors, anyone who needed to feel less alone. We hosted support groups, birthday parties for kids whose families couldn't afford venues, Thanksgiving dinners for those without family. "You've built something beautiful," Garrett said one evening, surveying the packed cafe. "Not just a business. A home for everyone who needs one." He was right. In trying to steal my home, Sienna had forced me to create something bigger, better, more lasting than any building. A community, a legacy, a life rebuilt on truth instead of lies. Sometimes late at night I thought about her in prison. Not with anger anymore, just sadness. What broken part of her needed to destroy others to feel whole? What childhood wound festered into such cruelty? I probably never know, and that was okay. Understanding evil didn't mean excusing it. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. Do you hate her? Charlotte asked once, old enough now to understand complexity. I considered the question seriously. No, sweetheart. Hate would mean she still has power over me. I nothing her. She's just someone who used to be in our lives and isn't anymore. Like a bad dream. Exactly like that. And what do we do when we wake up from bad dreams? We remember they're not real and make pancakes. She grinned, gap-toothed and perfect. That's my girl. As I write this, it's been 3 years since that night in the rain. 3 years since my son screamed for me to get out. 3 years since I thought I'd lost everything. Instead, I'd found everything that mattered. Family bound by choice rather than manipulation. Work that fed souls as well as bodies. Purpose beyond mere survival. Sienna had meant to destroy me. Instead, she'd revealed me. To myself, to my son, to a community that rallied around us. Her hatred had backfired spectacularly, creating more love than she'd ever imagined possible. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving freely, and building something beautiful from the ashes of what someone tried to burn down. She took my house, but I kept my home. She stole my money, but I retained my worth. She turned my son against me, but love brought him back. She said I was nothing, but I became everything I was meant to be. And that, more than any prison sentence, was justice. Real, lasting, soul-deep justice. The kind that comes from refusing to let cruelty win. 5 years after that rainy night when I stood on the sidewalk with nothing but $43 and a broken heart, I found myself standing in front of the old house again. Not as a victim, but as a survivor returning to close a chapter. The new owners, a young family with twin toddlers, had invited me to see what they'd done with the place. We heard the story, the wife Maria said gently. We wanted you to know it's a happy home again. The walls were different colors now. The kitchen modernized but warm. Charlotte's old nursery housed the twins, filled with laughter instead of lies. My bedroom had become an art studio where Maria painted landscapes. It's beautiful, I told them honestly. It's what it always should have been, a place where love lives. They showed me the garden where my roses still bloomed, tended carefully. The lemon tree Garrett's father had planted still bore fruit. Some things survived even the harshest winters. As I left, Maria pressed a jar of lemon preserves into my hands. From your tree, she said. So you'll always have a piece of home. I cried in the car, but they were clean tears. The kind that wash away the last residue of pain. That evening was Garrett's wedding to James. A small ceremony in the bakery's garden, Charlotte as the flower girl, me as the officiant. I'd gotten ordained online just for this. Do you promise to love, honor, and never gaslight each other? I asked, making everyone laugh. To build a family on trust, not manipulation. To choose truth even when lies seem easier. They said yes through tears and laughter. Charlotte stood between them, holding both their hands, officially gaining another dad who'd already proven his love through patience and presence. Destiny caught the bouquet, winking at her new boyfriend. Patricia made a toast about chosen families being the strongest families. Even Hans and Greta attended via video call, blessing the union that gave their granddaughter the stable home Sienna never could. To new beginnings, Garrett toasted, looking directly at me. And to the people who show us we deserve them. After the reception, as Charlotte showed off her dance moves and the adults relaxed with champagne, I stepped outside for air. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. 5 years of hell, but here we were. Not just surviving but thriving. A woman approached hesitantly. 50-ish, well-dressed but tired-looking. Are you Marlena Whitmore? Yes. My name is Rebecca Chen. My mother-in-law. She's going through something similar. Her daughter-in-law has isolated her, taken her savings. We found your story online and... Could we talk? I gave her my card, scheduled coffee for next week. It was the 4th such request this month. My story had become a lifeline for others trapped in similar situations. Patricia and I were developing a handbook, recognizing and escaping elder abuse, A survivor's guide. Grandma! Charlotte bounded over, frosting on her nose. Come dance. They're playing your song. My song turned out to be Respect by Aretha Franklin, Charlotte's choice, perfect in its message. As I danced with my granddaughter, surrounded by chosen family and found joy, I marveled at the journey. That terrified woman in the rain felt like a lifetime ago. Later, cleaning up with Destiny, she asked, "Any regrets?" I considered while wrapping leftover cake. I regret not seeing Sienna's nature sooner. I regret the years Charlotte lost with me. But mostly, no regrets. Every choice led here, to this moment, this life. Even the pain. Especially the pain. It taught me what I could survive. We worked in comfortable silence, the rhythm of shared labor its own language. The bakery had become our sanctuary, proof that women could build empires from flour and determination. As midnight approached, I found myself alone in the kitchen, mixing tomorrow's first batch of bread. The familiar action centered me, connected me to every version of myself. The young bride, the grieving widow, the struggling single mother, the successful business owner, the discarded elder, the phoenix who rose. My hands knew this work, found peace in it. "Mom!" Garrett appeared in the doorway, still in his wedding suit but disheveled from dancing. "Shouldn't you be on your honeymoon? Tomorrow." I just needed to say something. He joined me at the counter, picking up a spare apron automatically. We kneaded dough side by side, the silence full of memory. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "Still. Always. For not protecting you, for enabling her, for almost losing us. You've apologized 100 times, baby. It's forgiven." "I know. But tonight, marrying James, having Charlotte there, you performing the ceremony. I kept thinking about Dad. How proud he'd be that we survived. That we chose love over bitterness." I smiled, remembering my late husband's optimism. He always said the Whitmores were tougher than we looked. Must be where I get it from. We shaped loaves in companionable quiet, 3 generations of hands working the same dough. Charlotte had helped earlier, her small fingerprints still visible in one corner. "Sienna gets out in 3 years, Garrett said quietly. "Minimum security, good behavior." I'd known this was coming. "How do you feel about that?" "Scared. Angry. But also ready. We have restraining orders, Charlotte's in therapy. We've built a life she can't touch. If she's smart, she'll disappear. Start over somewhere far from here. And if she's not smart, then we'll handle it. Together. Like we handle everything now." He was right. We'd grown beyond her reach, built defenses not of walls but of community, truth, and unshakable love. She could return, but she'd find no cracks to exploit, no weaknesses to manipulate. We'd been forged in the fire she set, emerged as steel. The bread went into the ovens as the sun began to rise. Another day, another chance to feed people, build connections, choose joy. Garrett hugged me goodbye, heading home to his new husband and sleeping daughter. I watched him go, this man who'd found his way back from darkness. Alone in my kingdom of flower and possibility, I said a prayer of gratitude. Not for the pain. I wasn't that evolved. But for the growth it forced. For the family that chose reconstruction over resentment. For the community that caught me when I fell. For the strength I never knew I had until I needed it. Sienna had screamed at me to get out, and I had. Out of toxicity. Out of manipulation. Out of a life made small by someone else's sickness. I'd gotten out and discovered the whole world waited beyond that door. A world where grandmothers could be warriors, where bakeries became sanctuaries, where love multiplied when shared instead of hoarded. The phone rang. The morning's first order. "Marlena's Kitchen, how can we help you?" As I took the order for 6 dozen cookies for a child's birthday party, I smiled. "How can we help you?" It wasn't just a greeting. It was a philosophy, a promise, a purpose. We'd all been helped when we needed it most. Now we paid it forward, one cookie, one conversation, one small act of kindness at a time. The war was over. We'd won by refusing to become what fought us. Bitter, isolated, cruel. We'd won by choosing connection over protection, vulnerability over vengeance, hope over hatred. Most of all, we'd won by discovering that the opposite of abuse isn't revenge. It's community. It's showing up for each other. It's building something beautiful where something ugly tried to take root. My name is Marlena Whitmore. I'm 73 years old. I'm a baker, a mother, a grandmother, a survivor, and a thriver. Once I lost everything I thought mattered. In return, I gained everything that actually does. And every morning, as I open the doors to feed my community, I whisper the same prayer. Thank you for showing me I was never as alone as she wanted me to believe. The sun rises on another day of possibility. The ovens are warm, the coffee is brewing, and soon the bells above the door will chime as the first customers arrive. Life, real life, abundant life continues. And it is good. It is so very good. The end.